Hi everybody, it's Robert Salter, the Owl Man, and I'd just like to show you this wooden wildlife tower that we have in our garden. I built the tower about 8 years ago and it's still in really good condition. And I'd just like to show you this because it's an alternative to the brick wildlife tower which I've featured in a recent video. The wildlife tower is completely constructed out of timber, and it would be a cheaper alternative to building a brick wildlife tower. It's also a really good substantial build rather than just having a nest box on a tree somewhere. If this is built correctly, it would last for years. The main construct of this wildlife tower sits on these 4x4 timbers. If I was to build this wildlife tower out in a field, I would use telegraph poles or 6x6 timbers for a more substantial build. I have tapered wooden slats for the roof, 6 inches, and also for the front and rear of the tower. That is what the tower is predominantly cloaked in. And I've also used 6x1 timbers elsewhere. This is the underneath of the tower, and this is where I gain access into the nesting chambers. So you can see it is a 4x4 timber, and that's what the roof trusses sit on. It would certainly just like make it up like as you go along, but it's turned out a really good build. And it'd be great to see some of these just dotted about in the corners of fields. And this is the back of the nesting chambers. This is where I gain access into the nesting chambers. And also in the peak of the tower, I've created this opening here for bats to get into. I'm not sure whether the bats are using it, but it's there for them. They could well be using them. We always get bats in the garden, so this is the inside of the nesting chamber. This is the one that faces south. The one that faces north is identical to this nesting chamber. As you can see, there's been quite a bit of stock dove and jackdaw activity in here. Barn owls have roosted in here in the past, but as the garden's changed, you know, it was no longer ideal really for the barn owls because it's a bit too close to the house. But here we've got 2 young stock doves. The stock doves use the tower really frequently, and I don't mind that. They have to nest somewhere. This is the nesting chamber in the north side of the wildlife tower. That's looking out at the entrance. You can see the house just there, so the chance of actually getting barn owls in here would just be virtually zero really. But as I say, you've all seen the brick owl tower that I built down the garden, and that's home for the barn owl. So this is an alternative for species like stock dove and jackdaw. But yeah, I think this wooden owl tower is a great alternative to a brick wildlife tower. You shouldn't need planning permission for it either. So as I say, if it's built well, it'll last for many years. The legs on which the wildlife towers stand on are 1.2 metres wide by 1.5 metres in length, and the overall height of it is 3.2 metres. When I built this wildlife tower, I wasn't initially inspired by barn owls to build this wildlife tower. I was actually inspired to build it by a fantail dove that used to come in the garden. And when Sue and I was gardening, this dove just used to come within like a foot or 2 of us. It was an absolutely lovely bird. So we actually named this wildlife tower Patch Towers, because the fantail used to have these little brown patches on it, so we called it Patch. Yeah, and that was the inspiration for building this wildlife tower. And if this tower was built in the corner of a field somewhere, I think it would provide a really excellent home for barn owls going forward. If it was built well, you've got a really, you know, long-lasting home that's going to last for decades, and that's what it's all about. So yeah, have a think about putting one of these in your field. Thanks for watching.